name is Evan Rourke, and I live on the far edge of Brookhaven, a quiet suburb that pretends it's still small town America. White fences, trimmed hedges, the sort of neighborhood where dogs bark at the mailman and porch lights flick on in perfect unison when dusk hits. I moved here 2 years ago, hoping to find a slower rhythm after leaving my job as a night security officer in the city. I wanted peace, low crime, predictable nights, a yard to mow on weekends. That was before the rules. I found the note tucked into the welcome packet the realtor left on the kitchen counter. It was written on yellowed paper, folded twice, no signature. The handwriting leaned tall and spidery, like someone had tried to make their words take up as little space as possible. It read, "If you notice a tall man in your home, you must follow these rules. 1. Do not speak to him. 2. Not run from him. 3. Keep your lights off. 4. Never let him touch your shadow. 5. Do not leave until dawn." That was all. No greeting, no explanation. At the time, I thought it was a prank, maybe a leftover from Halloween, or a bored kid's attempt at being creepy. I tossed it into the junk drawer next to the extra keys and half-used batteries. The house itself was pleasant enough. 2 stories, pale blue siding, a creaky porch swing, and a backyard lined with pine. The previous owner had passed away. The realtor said his daughter sold it off quickly. Nothing unusual, except maybe the faint smell of cedar and something metallic when the air conditioning kicked on. My first month there was ordinary. I fixed up the lawn, replaced the kitchen tiles, got used to the silence. Nights in Brookhaven were quieter than the city. Too quiet sometimes. You could hear your own heartbeat if you sat still long enough. It was during my second month that I began to understand the rules weren't a joke. It started one night around 2 a.m. I woke to a faint creaking sound, like someone stepping on the stairs. It wasn't loud, just enough to pry me out of sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening. The house settled again, wood contracting, pipes sighing, and I convinced myself it was nothing. But then came a second creak lower, closer to my room. I reached for my phone. The screen's glow was a small comfort, lighting the edges of my nightstand, my half-open door. I didn't see anything in the hallway. I was about to set the phone down when I remembered the note. The first line pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. "If you notice a tall man in your home." It was ridiculous. I hadn't noticed anything, just noises. Still, I got up and walked to the door, half annoyed, half embarrassed. I flicked on the hallway light. The switch clicked, but the bulb didn't respond. The rest of the house was dark too. Every light switch dead. Even my phone dimmed strangely, like the brightness slider had been yanked down by something unseen. I went downstairs, barefoot on the cool hardwood, calling out just to break the silence. "Hello." The word felt wrong the moment it left my mouth, like it had weight. I froze. The air changed. It grew heavier, pressing against my skin, humming faintly like the air before a thunderstorm. Then, at the far end of the hallway near the living room, something moved. At first, it looked like a column of shadow, taller than the doorway, so tall its head brushed the ceiling. It stood unnaturally still. Not a person. No breathing, no shifting. Just there. The only light in the room came from the street lamp filtering through the blinds, thin gray bands across the floor. I could see its outline, in that dimness, impossibly long arms, hands hanging low, almost to the floor. I couldn't make out a face. Only the faint suggestion of shoulders narrowing into nothing. I didn't run. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe the part of my brain that handles survival had short-circuited. I just stood there, the note's words crawling back to me. "Do not speak. Do not run. Keep your lights off." The air felt cold, and I realized the hum I'd heard wasn't just in the air. It was in my bones, vibrating faintly through me. The tall shape turned, or at least I think it did, and began to move, gliding rather than walking, its head scraping faintly against the ceiling. My instinct screamed to bolt out the front door, but the next rule surfaced: never leave until dawn. So I backed away instead, slow and deliberate, like a man trying to unmake his own noise. The shadow followed, not fast, not slow, just matching my pace. Every time I blinked, it seemed closer. The temperature kept dropping until I could see my breath, even though it was late May. When I reached the staircase, I turned and climbed, never taking my eyes off the hallway below. I thought maybe if I kept distance, if I just waited, morning would come and whatever this was would vanish. But the thing didn't stop at the stairs. It started to ascend. The sound wasn't footsteps. It was softer, like fabric dragging across the wood. I ducked into my bedroom and shut the door, pressing my weight against it. I wanted to turn on the lamp, but my hand froze before the switch. The rule, lights off. My heart hammered against my ribs, counting seconds, minutes. And then something touched the other side of the door. Not a knock, more like the faint sweep of fingers brushing down the wood. Slowly, deliberately, I held my breath. The brushing stopped, and silence filled the space between us, so thick I could hear my pulse in my ears. Then the doorknob began to turn. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knob rotated halfway, stopped, rotated again. Metal scraped faintly. It wasn't forcing its way in, it was testing. I slid backward until I hit the opposite wall. My legs refused to stand. For a long time, the knob kept turning over and over, like it was curious about how it worked. When it finally stopped, the silence felt worse. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Maybe an hour, maybe more. The hum eventually faded. The air grew warmer. When I dared to open the door, there was nothing on the other side, except my own shadow, stretched impossibly long down the hallway. Morning light seeped through the blinds, yellow and ordinary. I searched every inch of the house. The locks were still engaged, the windows still latched. There was no sign of anyone else. I found the note again, unfolded it, stared at those 5 rules. For the first time, I noticed faint writing on the back, faded almost to invisibility. I held it near the window until the sunlight revealed the words, "If he finds your shadow, he can stay." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. For a week I left all the lights on, even broke one of the rules intentionally, hoping to prove it false. Nothing happened. No noises, no cold air. The logical part of me started rewriting the memory. Maybe it was a dream, maybe sleep paralysis, maybe the house's strange wiring. Then, on the 8th night, I came home late from the grocery store. It was just past midnight. I parked in the driveway and saw something through the upstairs window. My bedroom light flickering, the shape of someone tall standing beside the curtain. When I rushed inside, the light went out. The air inside felt colder again, faintly humming. I checked every room, every closet, empty. But when I walked back down the hallway, I saw it faint footprints on the floorboards, darker than dust, leading toward my room. That was the moment I stopped doubting the note. Whatever the tall man was, he was bound to rules. Old ones, older than the house. Rules someone before me had learned the hard way. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and wrote a new rule beneath the others, in my own handwriting, 6. If he returns, remember, he only leaves when you don't. It didn't make sense when I wrote it, but the words came from somewhere deep, as if they weren't mine. I slept fitfully, half expecting to wake to creaking stairs again. Instead, I woke to birdsong and morning light. Everything normal. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked pale, drawn, but otherwise fine. Then I noticed it, the reflection of the window behind me. The blinds were open. I could see the yard, the line of pines. And in that reflection, faint but distinct, a tall, dark figure stood just beyond the glass, where no one should have been. When I turned around, the yard was empty. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the rules have changed again. Or maybe I have. Sometimes I wake in the night and find the lights dead, my own shadow longer than it should be. Sometimes I hear him moving through the walls, brushing against the drywall like he's testing the edges of my world. But I've learned one thing the note didn't say. One truth hidden between the rules: the tall man doesn't visit houses. He keeps them. And once he's noticed you back, you don't really live alone anymore. I used to think silence was the sound of safety. Now it feels like waiting. It's been 3 nights since I saw him reflected in the window. The tall man hasn't appeared again. At least, not where I can see him. but his presence has thickened in the house. It's in the corners, in the way shadows seem to linger after I pass through them. It's in the faint hum in the air that never quite disappears, like electricity humming through unseen wires. I don't tell anyone. Who would I tell? Hey, I think something tall lives in my house, and I can't turn on the lights. It would sound insane, even to me. So I keep quiet, keep following the rules, because the one time I didn't, something changed. The light switch in my bedroom still doesn't work. The bulb isn't burned out. I replaced it twice, but the instant I screw one in, the filament blackens and dies. So I've learned to live in the dark. My phone screen, a single candle, the pale light from the moon through the blinds. That's all I allow myself after sunset. I try to stay awake until dawn. Coffee helps, but not much. My body keeps betraying me. Eyelids drooping around 3 in the morning, dreams curling through the edge of consciousness like smoke. When I drift off, I see the same thing, the hallway stretched long and warped, his head bending beneath the ceiling, his arms dragging across the floor as he turns the corner toward me. I wake before he reaches the door. Always before. The strangest part is how the house seems to rearrange itself now. Subtle things. I'll find doors half open when I know I closed them. A chair facing a different direction. Once, I came downstairs to find the note. The original rules, moved from the kitchen drawer to the center of the dining table, unfolded neatly. The writing had changed slightly. Not much, but enough. The 5th rule used to read, "Do not leave until dawn." Now it said, "Do not leave him alone until dawn." I stared at it until my vision blurred, reading that line over and over, trying to make sense of it. Who was changing the words? What did it even mean? Don't leave him alone. Was I meant to watch him? Stay near him? I tore the note in half out of sheer frustration and shoved the pieces in the trash. That night, I heard footsteps. Not soft ones. Heavy, deliberate, crossing the floor above me while I sat in the living room. The lights flickered once. The hum rose. I didn't move. I remembered the new rule. Don't leave him alone. And for some reason I went upstairs. My body moved before my mind could stop it. The house was dark except for a faint bluish glow seeping from under the door to the guest room. I hadn't turned on anything in there. I barely even went inside that room. The door was cracked open just enough to show the corner of the bed and part of the wall. Something leaned there, a shape too tall, bent at an angle, its arms hanging so long they nearly brushed the floor. I should have been terrified, but in that moment, I felt something closer to resignation, as if I'd been expecting this, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. The glow came from the wall behind it, my old mirror, propped against the floor since I'd never gotten around to hanging it. Its surface shimmered faintly, though no light source should have caused that. The tall man didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood before the mirror as if staring into it. His head turned a fraction. I didn't see a face, only the impression of one too tall and too narrow, as though stretched beyond human proportion. I could feel him looking, and then, like mist evaporating, he was gone. The air snapped back to normal. The hum stopped. The mirror's glow faded. I walked closer, slowly, too afraid of what I'd find if I ran. The floor where he'd stood was colder, the boards faintly warped, as if something immense had pressed down on them for years. I knelt and touched the floor. My fingertips came away gray, coated in what looked like ash. That night I dragged the mirror out to the garage. I didn't break it, something told me not to. But I covered it with a sheet, shoved it behind a stack of boxes, and closed the door. When I came back inside, every light in the house was on. I didn't turn them off, not right away. But then I felt that vibration under my skin again, that soft warning hum, and I forced myself to flick the switches one by one, until only darkness remained. He doesn't like the light. That much I understand now. Since then, the nights have stretched longer. Time doesn't move cleanly here anymore. I'll glance at the clock and see 24/7 a.m., then blink, and it's 247 again. Sometimes the second hand ticks backward. I've stopped trusting clocks. The tall man doesn't always appear, But when he does, the house itself seems to hold its breath. The hum turns low and steady. The air cools. Shadows swell in the corners. I feel him before I see him, a pressure against my chest, a presence that seems to bend the shape of the space around it. Sometimes I hear him in the walls, long, slow movements, like someone brushing their palms against the inside of the drywall. Once, while I was sitting in bed, I saw the outline of fingers press faintly outward from beneath the paint. Just 5 shallow dents, moving downward until they faded. I didn't scream. I've learned noise draws him closer. It's strange what becomes normal. The fear changes shape. At first it was panic, raw and jagged. Now it's something quieter, like living beside a storm you can't outrun. I've started writing the rules again, copying them by hand each night before I go to bed. It feels like a way to hold the edges of reality still. Every time I write them, they come out a little different. Sometimes the wording shifts. Sometimes a new one appears on its own line, as if someone is adding to the list while I'm not looking. Last night, a new one surfaced in faint pencil 7. Do not look for where he goes when he leaves. That might have been my handwriting. Or not. Tonight, something new happens. It's raining, a steady, fine mist tapping the roof. I'm in the living room with every light off, watching the reflections move in the dark glass of the window. The rain makes everything shimmer faintly. My own reflection looks ghostly, blurred. Then I see him again. Not in the room. Behind the reflection. He's standing just inside the frame of the window's glass, as though the pane separates 2 different rooms, mine and his. His shape is clear this time. Too thin, too still. The edges of him ripple faintly, like heat over asphalt. The hum deepens, crawling up my spine. I stay seated. I remember the rules. Do not speak. Do not run. Do not turn on the lights. Do not leave. He doesn't move closer. But the reflection shifts subtly until I realize he's not reflected in the glass anymore. He's reflected through it, as if I'm seeing a version of the house where he's the one who lives here. And I'm the ghost. My breath fogs the window. When the condensation clears, he's gone. The hum stops. The rain softens. The clock reads 2:47 a.m. again. I tell myself to breathe, to hold still until sunrise. But when the light finally comes, the world outside looks different. The trees in the yard lean at strange angles, like they've been bent. The neighbor's fence, the one white picket line I always see from the kitchen window, is missing 2 panels, split clean through, as if something tall brushed past them during the night. I go to the garage to check the mirror. The sheet is gone. The boxes are untouched, but the mirror now hangs upright on the wall, nailed there. I didn't do that. The reflection looks normal at first. Then I notice the faint shape behind me. It's not him this time. It's me, but taller. The reflection stands half a head higher, neck elongated, arms hanging too low. It mirrors my movements exactly, but there's a delay, a lag of a heartbeat, like it's trying to remember how to be me. When I turn to leave, the reflection doesn't move. I leave the garage door open, walk straight back into the rain, and don't look behind me. I wait on the porch until daylight breaks fully, until the world feels solid again. By noon, everything is ordinary once more, except for the note on my front door. New paper, same handwriting. If you notice a tall man in your home, you must follow these rules. There's a new one added in fresh ink. 8. When he looks like you, it's already too late. The night didn't end. I watched the clock roll toward dawn, 4:53, 5 and 17, 5 and 59, and still the sky outside stayed black. No light on the horizon, no bird song, just the same trembling dark pressing against the windows. I thought maybe the storm clouds were heavy enough to blot out sunrise. But after an hour of staring at that unmoving sky, I knew something else had shifted. The world had decided to hold its breath. I sat in the living room, every nerve on edge, trying not to glance toward the hall mirror or the blank windows. The hum was back, low and steady, coming from inside the walls like a pulse. I had one thought looping through my head. When he looks like you, it's already too late. The reflection from the garage, that wasn't a trick of the light. It hadn't been my imagination. Because now, sitting here in the dark, I could feel him moving through the house with my footsteps. The air carried a rhythm too precise to be coincidence. I shifted my weight. A second later, somewhere upstairs, the floor creaked in perfect response. I whispered under my breath, testing it. "Hello!" Silence. Then, faintly, the exact same voice whispered back from upstairs. "Hello." The words were flat, hollow. Not a recording, not an echo, something repeating the shape of my speech without understanding what it meant. The hum deepened. I stood, hands shaking, fighting the urge to run outside, but the fifth rule echoed through my mind like an order: do not leave until dawn. Except there was no dawn. I moved toward the stairs, phone light trembling in my grip. The beam hit the walls and scattered strangely, like the light was bending. Halfway up, I caught sight of a figure at the landing. My height, my build, standing just still enough that I might have mistaken it for my own shadow, if it weren't facing the wrong direction. I froze. It didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, its head tilted. Not much, just a few degrees too far, like a puppet testing the limits of its string. The air between us rippled faintly. "Who are you?" I asked before I could stop myself. It smiled. My smile. Every muscle in my body locked. I stepped back. The figure mirrored me. A half-second delay, movements slightly imperfect, as if remembering how to be me. The skin along my arms prickled. My phone screen flickered, dimmed, and then went black. The hum surged loud enough to rattle the banister. The light died completely. When my eyes adjusted to the dark, the figure was gone. But the sound hadn't left. Footsteps now, slow and deliberate, circling somewhere above. I gripped the railing, forcing my breathing quiet. There were 7 steps to the top. I counted them once. Now there were more. Every time I climbed one, the hallway stretched farther away, like the house was adding distance to keep me moving. By the time I reached the landing, my pulse was a drumbeat. The guest room door was open again, that faint bluish glow leaking through. The mirror I'd hidden in the garage stood inside, perfectly upright, reflecting a room that wasn't this one. Different wallpaper, different bed, no light source at all. And in that other version of the room, something was standing closer to the glass. It was me again. No, not quite. Taller by inches, face a shade too pale, eyes black as voids. The reflection didn't match my movements now. It was ahead of them, predicting them, watching me through the frame like it had been waiting for me to arrive. I wanted to smash the mirror. But before I could move, the reflection raised a hand, my hand, and pressed it against the glass. The surface pulsed. I felt the same pulse in my palm. A pressure, then cold, then a tug. My hand moved without me commanding it, lifting toward the mirror in perfect sync. I bit down on my lip hard enough to taste blood, forcing myself to pull back. The air felt thick, as if the whole room were underwater. My reflection's expression shifted, no longer smiling, now something colder, curious, patient. Then its mouth moved. The voice came not from the mirror, but from behind me. "Don't leave me alone." I spun around. Nothing there. Just the doorway, the dark hallway, the hum now so low it felt like it came from inside my skull. I turned back. The reflection was gone. I staggered out of the room and down the hall, half running, half blind in the dark. My shoulder hit a wall that shouldn't have been there. The layout of the house had changed again. Doors I'd never seen before lined the hall, each slightly ajar. From one of them, I heard breathing. Slow, even, steady. Not mine. The hum vanished. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute. I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. The metal was cold, colder than the air. I pushed the door open. Inside was my bedroom. My bed, my desk, my reflection in the window. Only I was still standing in the doorway. The other me, whatever it was, sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring down at the floor. When it lifted its head, I saw my own eyes looking back, but flat and unblinking. I wanted to speak, but my throat locked. It stood, taller again, arms longer. And when it moved toward me, its steps made no sound. I backed away, step by step, until my back hit the opposite wall. The figure stopped a few feet away, studying me like I was something fragile. Then it whispered, "Stay." My knees nearly gave out. I shook my head, the word catching in my throat. "Stay," it said again, quieter. "He doesn't like it when you leave." The air flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw the tall man standing where the reflection had been, his silhouette filling the doorway, hands brushing the ceiling. Then it was just me again, the room warped, walls bending inward. The sound came back, louder, deeper, shaking the floorboards. I ran, downstairs through the living room, toward the front door. My hand hit the lock, cold metal slick with condensation. I pulled. The door didn't move. Outside, nothing. No stars, no street lamps, just black, like the world had been erased beyond the glass. A reflection flickered on the window, beside the door. My own face, pale, trembling, and behind it, him. The tall man, standing impossibly close, his outline rippling like heat, his head tilted, brushing the frame. The hum rose to a frequency that made my teeth ache. I turned, ready to bolt for the back, but the house had other plans. The hallway stretched, every doorway leading back to itself. I ran in circles until the furniture blurred, until I wasn't sure which direction was which. Then, silence again. The hum cut out completely, leaving only my heartbeat. I found myself back in the living room, facing the mirror from the guest room. It stood there now upright, waiting. My reflection inside smiled, small, patient. "You don't have to be afraid," it said. My voice, perfectly calm. "You're already home." I stepped closer without meaning to. The air between me and the mirror was freezing now, every breath crystallizing. The reflection reached out, hand extended, and this time, I didn't pull back fast enough. Our palms touched through the glass. The world went still. For a moment, I saw everything in double, two rooms layered over each other, two versions of me standing in different realities, one trembling, one serene. The glass rippled, and my hand began to sink through it like water. Panic broke through the numbness. I tried to pull free, but something on the other side held tight. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist. My own fingers, only longer, stronger. The hum returned, deafening now, vibrating through the floor, the walls, my bones. I screamed, though no sound came out. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pressure released. I fell backward onto the floor. The mirror was still. My reflection stared back, exactly like me again, no delay, no distortion. I stayed there for minutes, maybe hours, waiting for the house to breathe again. When I finally stood, dawn had come. Pale light slipped through the blinds. The clock read 6:12 am. Everything was quiet, ordinary. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. Then I noticed the floor by the mirror, two sets of footprints. Mine, and another set beside them, facing the opposite direction. And when I turned toward the hallway, the light followed a second too late, as if cast by someone standing just behind me. I don't know which one of us woke up first. The light was a lie. I thought dawn had broken, pale, steady, gentle. But when I opened the blinds, the world outside was wrong. It wasn't morning at all. It was colorless. The sky hung blank and depthless, like the inside of a shell. The street was empty, the air unmoving. Even the trees stood too still, their branches frozen in mid-sway. I closed the blinds again. The moment the fabric fell shut, the light faded, leaving only the house's thick gray dark. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, and stopped. The hum came back. Low, constant, like breath through the bones of the house. I sat in the living room, hands pressed to my knees, trying not to listen. My reflection in the window had gone faint, as if even light had given up on me. Somewhere above, a floorboard popped. Slow, deliberate, not settling, stepping. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd already seen worse. But the steps came again, moving toward the stairs. The same rhythm as before, mine. I stood. "Stay where you are," I whispered, though I wasn't sure which one of us I meant. No answer. Just that soft creak of weight shifting, matching me beat for beat. I took a breath and climbed the stairs, each step groaning a second later from the floor above, like an echo too slow to belong to sound. The house felt stretched, thinner somehow. The walls leaned. The air pressed inward, damp and heavy. When I reached the top landing, the hall looked longer again. Shadows breathed along the edges of the ceiling. I moved toward the bedroom. Halfway there, I stopped. The door to the guest room was open again, and from inside came that same faint bluish glow. The mirror waited. Only now, it didn't reflect the room behind me. It reflected me, standing in the doorway, but with the tall man's shadow rising behind my shoulders, impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. I didn't turn. Couldn't. The rules had become instinct by now. Don't run. Don't speak. Don't light the way. The hum deepened, vibrating in my teeth. I stepped closer. The reflection mirrored me at first, perfectly synchronized. Then, when I stopped, it didn't. My double took one step more, closer to the glass. "Stop," I whispered. He didn't. His face stayed mine, but his eyes were darker, empty sockets fading to gray. He lifted his hand, the same one I'd touched the mirror with before, and pressed it flat against the surface. A cold wind moved through the room, though every window was closed. Behind him, the tall man shifted, a motion too smooth, too slow, like smoke finding its shape. His arms unfolded, reaching around my reflection as if to steady it. The glass trembled. The double smiled, my smile, and whispered in my voice, "He's almost here." Something in me cracked. I lunged forward, grabbed the edge of the mirror, and slammed it face down on the floor. The sound was deafening. The glass didn't break, not a single crack. It just lay there, humming softly. The glow faded. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was waiting. I turned toward the hallway and saw movement at the far end, not a figure. A distortion, tall and narrow, bending the air like heat. The tall man didn't walk. He unfolded, each movement like a long exhale, his limbs extending into the ceiling, his shape half there, half not. My vision swam. The walls bowed outward. The hum built until it was all I could hear. He stopped halfway down the hall. I could feel him watching, though he had no eyes. The air around him shimmered with shadow, darker than the rest of the dark. Something inside me wanted to kneel, to give in. The feeling wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition, like he'd been here forever, and I was only just noticing. The mirror behind me rattled once. When I looked down, the reflection had changed again. No more room, no more double. Just me standing inside the mirror, looking out at an empty hall. I lifted my hand without thinking, and the reflection lifted too. Perfect sync again. For a moment, I thought maybe it was over, that things had returned to normal. Then the reflection blinked. I hadn't. I stumbled back. The reflection didn't. It stood there, smiling faintly, tilting its head just enough to feel wrong. The tall man moved again, slow, deliberate. The air rippled as he reached one long arm toward the reflection, and the thing that wore my face turned to meet him. They touched hands. The hum stopped, and the lights came on. Every bulb in the house flared to life at once. I threw up an arm against the brightness. When I looked again, the hall was empty. The mirror was cracked down the center, thin as a vein. For the first time in weeks, I felt warmth on my skin. I almost cried, but the warmth didn't fade. It kept building, too strong, too dry. The air smelled like ozone. My shadow lengthened on the floor, longer than my body, reaching out toward the mirror. I stepped back, heart pounding. The shadow didn't follow. It stayed fixed in place, bent at an odd angle. Then, slowly, it lifted its hand. Not mine, its own. The crack in the mirror widened, spidering outward until the glass split completely. Behind the shards wasn't the wall, just darkness, deep and bottomless. I could see movement in it. Slow waves, like something breathing on the other side. The hum started again, quiet this time, softer than a whisper. I backed away, tripping over the rug, and fell hard against the wall. My eyes wouldn't leave that darkness. It felt like it was watching me, waiting for me to step forward. Then, from inside it, a voice, my own voice, spoke. "Ivan." I froze. "Ivan, come back." The words were calm, almost gentle. I could see shapes forming in the dark. Hands, shoulders, my face. "Come back," it said again. "You don't belong there." I shook my head. "I'm already here." "No," the voice said. "You're on the wrong side." The shadows around the mirror rippled, stretching toward me. My shadow reached back, fingertips almost touching the edge of that void. If I'd been stronger, maybe I could have resisted. But the sound, the hum, wasn't just noise anymore. It was memory. It was heartbeat. It was mine. I crawled closer, trembling. The reflection leaned forward to meet me. We were inches apart now, face to face, only a thin layer of darkness between us. He smiled. And then the tall man's hand came out of the dark. Long, black fingers wrapped around my reflection's shoulder, pulling it back into the void. My double didn't fight. It just watched me, smiling faintly as it vanished. The hum roared, and the crack in the mirror sealed itself shut, leaving only my own pale reflection again. I was alone, or I thought I was. The sound didn't fade this time. It grew steadier, deeper, sensing with my pulse until I couldn't tell which was which. And then I realized the reflection wasn't moving at all. I lifted my hand. It didn't. The tall man stood behind it now, faint and distant, one hand resting gently on its shoulder. My reflection began to breathe. I didn't. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. The hum fell silent. Somewhere in the dark, the floorboards creaked again. Footsteps. Mine. Coming closer. I didn't dare move. The air in the room shifted, colder now, carrying that familiar metallic tang. A voice, quiet, level, identical to mine, spoke from just beside my ear. "You shouldn't have broken the mirror." I turned. No one there. Only the window, black and endless, reflecting the two of us standing side by side. Except I hadn't moved yet. At some point, I stopped checking the clock. Time had given up pretending to move. The numbers on the wall flickered between 2D47, 6012, caught in some loop I couldn't read my way out of. I tried marking the hours by coffee, by the hum, by how long the darkness held. But the darkness had no rhythm now. It just breathed when I did. I don't know when the whispering started. Maybe it had always been there, a low sound beneath the hum. It wasn't words at first, just the rustle of air, a dry cadence that rose and fell like the pulse of the house. Then, slowly, it began to form syllables. Not loud enough to understand, but close enough to sound like thought. The voice was mine. I sat on the floor near the mirror's frame, though I'd pushed it flat again, face down. The floorboards underneath still thrummed faintly. I could feel something pressing from the other side. Not quite touch, not quite warmth. When I moved, the sound inside the mirror moved too. I wasn't sure if I was following it, or it was following me. I tried talking out loud once. "If you can hear me, stop." The hum vanished. For half a breath, I thought that was victory. Then the air behind me shifted, a faint exhale brushing the back of my neck. I turned fast. Nothing there. Only my own shadow, cast in the faint gray light leaking from the hall. It was standing at the wrong angle, sideways on the wall, bent like it didn't understand where the floor was. When I stepped left, it stepped a moment later. Delayed again. That delay scared me more than the tall man ever had. It meant there was still something trying to catch up to me. I left the room. The hallway had changed. The doors were gone. Only the walls remained, stretching in both directions like the house had decided to forget where anything led. The ceiling sagged, low enough that I had to duck. Every sound was my own. Footsteps, breath, heart. The house mirrored me perfectly. Until it didn't. Halfway down the corridor, another sound joined in. The second set of footsteps. I stopped. The echo didn't. It kept walking. The hum rose, higher, vibrating in my ribs. I took one step back. The other step stopped too. Then a voice, thin and distant, floated down the hall. "You're still here." My voice. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I pressed a hand to the wall, trying to steady myself. The wallpaper pulsed under my palm, as if something alive were beating behind it. The voice again. "You're still here, but not where you think." My throat closed. I wanted to answer, but the rule, "Do not speak to him," burned in my mind. Silence pressed in. Then the hum dropped to a low frequency, so deep it felt like the floor itself was groaning. The walls shifted, peeling outward. For a second I saw another hallway beyond the one I stood in. A corridor identical in shape, but darker, emptier. Inside that shadowed hallway stood a figure, tall. He filled the entire frame, bending his head to fit. His arms hung low, fingertips dragging the floor. I couldn't see his face. Only the outline of something impossibly stretched, distorted like a photo pulled out of focus. He began to move, not toward me, just around me, circling the edges of the two halls, his shape slipping between one world and the next. The hum kept rhythm with his movement. Every time he passed behind me, the air cooled. When he slipped to the other side again, warmth returned. I realized, suddenly, that the warmth wasn't light at all. It was the reflection. My reflection was standing close somewhere nearby, even though I hadn't looked into glass. The tall man paused mid-step. The hum stopped with him. Then a whisper came from the wall, low and careful. "Do not leave him alone." The second rule that had changed. I understood it now. The tall man wasn't hunting me. He was keeping watch over something else, my other self, the one that shouldn't exist. If I left the reflection alone too long, it would finish becoming me. I ran. The hallway collapsed inward as I moved, the walls breathing like lungs, pushing me toward the stairs. Every shadow lengthened behind me, pulling my outline thin. I hit the first step and stumbled, catching myself on the railing. The air below was darker, thick, wet darkness that looked almost liquid. I forced myself down, step after step, until I reached the living room. Everything was gone. No furniture, no lights, just the house's skeleton, bare beams and hollow windows. The front door stood wide open, but beyond it wasn't the yard. It was black, the kind of black that swallows everything it touches. In the center of the room stood the mirror, upright again, unbroken. It faced the door. I knew I shouldn't go near it. But the hum had shifted. It wasn't a warning this time. It was calling. When I stepped closer, the reflection didn't show me. It showed the house the way it had been. Chairs, tables, the faint yellow light from the porch, a home. And in the reflection, I was standing there. That version of me looked calm, hands at his sides, no fear in his face. He gestured toward the door and said softly, "Come home." I shook my head. "I am home." He smiled. "No, you're with him." Something moved behind me. The tall man's shadow spread across the wall, tall and thin and patient. I didn't turn. The reflection raised its hand, and the shadow behind me did too. Their gestures matched. Mine didn't. The hum reached a frequency that made my eyes water. The reflection's smile stretched too wide, splitting the skin at the corners until it was a line of dark light. Then he said something I'd never written, something not on the list of rules. "If you stop being afraid, you'll forget which side you were on." The glass rippled. The reflection stepped closer, until only an inch of mirror separated us. His breath fogged the inside of the surface. Behind me, the tall man lowered his head until it hovered just above mine. The air thickened. I could feel his presence pressing down, guiding my shadow toward the reflection's feet. The rule never let him touch your shadow. I moved too slowly. The shadows met. The instant they did, the hum stopped. Everything inside me went silent, like a switch had been flipped. The reflection reached through, not far, just enough for his hand to press against my chest. I felt it as a chill that burned, cold and deep, sinking under my ribs. Then, he stepped back. The mirror cleared. And for the first time, the reflection didn't move at all. I raised my hand. It didn't. I tilted my head. Nothing. The tall man was gone. Only me. Only silence. I stared until the stillness became unbearable. Then I turned away, just once, to make sure the room behind me was real. When I looked back, my reflection had changed. It was still me, but smiling again. And when I blinked, I saw its hand lift behind the glass, holding a slip of paper. The same yellowed note I'd found the first day. A new rule written at the bottom 9. When he leaves you alone, it's because you've taken his place. I reached for the glass. The paper on my side of the room lay on the floor, blank. The reflection's note still had writing. He smiled, slow and patient, and mouthed one last word I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "Stay." The hum returned. Steady now, part of me. The walls straightened, the furniture returned, the house settling into its familiar quiet, everything normal again. Except for the reflection that sometimes lags when I walk past the window, except for how I don't feel tired anymore, or hungry, or real, and except for the fact that outside, it's still night. The house doesn't breathe anymore. It listens. Every sound I make is too loud now. Each footstep, each exhale, landing in the air like a disturbance. The walls hold the echoes too long, as if the house is considering what to do with them. I think it's deciding whether they belong to me. The clock hasn't ticked once since the last hum faded, but the night hasn't passed either. It just thickens, slow and patient, the color of iron. I tried opening the door again earlier. It wasn't a door anymore, just a rectangle of black, solid and depthless, absorbing my reflection but giving nothing back. I think I understand now. The tall man doesn't keep you prisoner. He teaches you how to stay. The rules aren't warnings, they're instructions. A way to survive the transformation without tearing in half. 1. Don't speak to him, because your voice begins to sound like his. 2. Don't run, because movement invites doubling. 3. Keep your lights off, because light shows you what you've lost. 4. Never let him touch your shadow, because that's where he grows. 5. Don't leave until dawn, because dawn never comes here. I repeat them like prayers now, not to hold him away, but to keep the edges of myself in place. Something changed tonight. The hum is inside me now, deep under the ribs, steady and slow, sensing with my pulse. When I press my hand to the wall, the house hums back in time. It's the same rhythm, the same low frequency I used to hear when he was near. Sometimes I think he's inside the walls still. Other times, I think he's inside me. I haven't seen my reflection since the last time it smiled. I've avoided the mirror, the windows, even the dull gleam off the faucet handles. Still, I catch glimpses, quick flashes of movement at the edge of vision, long arms, a stoop, a stillness that isn't human. I keep telling myself it's the house adjusting. Houses do that, expand and contract with temperature, settle into their foundations. Only this house doesn't settle, it stretches. The hallway is longer again. Each time I walk it, it adds distance, as though it's giving me more room to roam. I think it wants me comfortable. There's a whispering in the floorboards now. At first I thought it was the pipes, but then I realized it was repeating patterns of sound, like syllables, strung together without words. It takes me a few minutes to understand that they're my own voice, slowed down, replayed through wood and air. They're not words I remember saying. When I press my ear to the floor, the whispering stops. When I stand, it resumes. It doesn't want me listening, only hearing. I go back to the living room. The mirror stands upright again, whole, waiting. I tell myself not to look, but I do. The reflection shows the same room, same furniture, but everything's slightly off. The couch facing the wrong way, the windows showing a night that looks deeper than this one. And there I am again, standing where I used to stand. He looks calm, rested, the faintest curve of a smile on his face. He looks like a man who finally understands what's expected of him. I raise a hand. The reflection does too, perfect sync. For a heartbeat, I feel the smallest hint of relief. Maybe the balance is restored. Maybe this is the end of it. Then the reflection tilts its head, not the small human kind of tilt, but a slow, stretching motion, like the neck is being uncoiled. The smile widens. The room behind him darkens until it's only him and the faint outline of something towering behind his shoulders. The tall man. I don't move. The hum rises again, rattling the glass. The reflection's mouth moves, and though I can't hear it, I know exactly what it says. Stay. I step closer. The glass fogs faintly, but I don't see my breath. The fog is on the inside, my reflection's breath. I whisper, even though I know I shouldn't. What happens if I do? The reflection's smile fades. His expression softens, turns almost sad. Then his eyes shift, black filling them edge to edge. He steps back, and the tall man's hand lowers onto his shoulder like a blessing. My own shadow ripples across the floor toward the mirror. This time I don't fight it. When they touch, the hum stops, replaced by a stillness so heavy it feels like being underwater. The room dims, though no light was lost. The reflection doesn't move anymore. It stands still, waiting. I reach out, not to the mirror but to the air beside it, and I feel the cold. It's the same temperature that used to mean he was near, only now it feels familiar, right? I realize I'm not afraid. That frightens me more than anything else. Something moves in the periphery, a slow elongation of my own form, stretching until my fingertips brush the ceiling. I don't have to look to know what shape it's taking. The hum returns, quiet and steady. A heartbeat that isn't mine. I move to the window. The night outside hasn't changed, colorless, frozen, but the world looks smaller now. The houses across the street are gone. The trees have become silhouettes pressed against a blank sky. My reflection in the glass is barely human. The head too high, the limbs too long, but the eyes are mine. I reach for the blinds, intending to shut them. My hand keeps going, passing straight through the glass like mist. The cold doesn't hurt. It feels like relief. Then something pulls back, softly, firmly, until my hand is on my side again. The window ripples, smooth and calm. A voice, deep, resonant, almost kind, speaks from everywhere at once. "Not yet." The tall man's voice. It isn't language exactly. It's vibration translated by my bones. But I understand. Not yet means I'm close. Not yet means he's still teaching me how to stay without breaking. I back away from the window and sink into the couch. My shadow stretches far across the floor, too long, too fluid. The hum steadies, matching my breathing. I think about the note, the first one, the rules written in that tall, narrow hand. Maybe he didn't write it. Maybe I did, years from now, when I'd learned how to exist like this. Maybe every house has its own version of me inside it, whispering through the walls to whoever moves in next. A strange calm settles over me. I close my eyes, expecting darkness, but see only the faint glow of the mirror behind my lids. It pulses like a slow heartbeat, calling softly, endlessly. The hum rises to meet it, and I let it carry me until I can't tell where the sound ends and my thoughts begin. The air grows colder, but it doesn't bite anymore. It holds me steady, as if hands larger than mine are bracing the edges of my body, keeping me from coming apart. And for a moment, I think I see him, the tall man, standing behind my reflection in the mirror. His outline bends, his form indistinct, but I can sense what he's doing. He isn't reaching for me. He's showing me how to stand still enough to belong. The hum fades. The house sighs once, a deep exhale through the beams. Silence. Then, softly, a new soundy footsteps. Slow, even, familiar. They're mine, walking toward the mirror. I don't get up. I don't need to. The version of me inside the glass steps forward closer until his palm presses against the inside of the surface. I feel the pressure on my own palm, where it rests on my knee, skin to skin through something that isn't glass anymore. And then, just like that, I'm calm. The hum returns to its low rhythm, no longer warning, no longer separate. I whisper the final rule, the one I'd pretended wasn't written for me. When he leaves you alone, it's because you've taken his place. The air settles. The shadows stop moving. The night holds. I understand now. The tall man doesn't haunt houses. He fills the spaces left by those who tried to leave. Now it's my turn to wait. Someone will open the door one day, another new owner moving in. They'll find the note tucked inside a drawer. The handwriting will be tall and narrow, letters pressed close together, like they're trying not to take up too much space. And when they notice a tall man in their home, I'll make sure they have the rules to keep them safe. At least until they learn how to stay. The night never ended. It only changed owners. I don't remember when I stopped being Evan. Maybe it was when the mirror stopped showing a difference between us. Maybe when I stopped hearing the hum as sound and started feeling it as thought. Either way, I've learned the shape of stillness, how to fill it, how to hold it until someone new disturbs the air. The house knows me now. It remembers every breath I've taken inside its walls. When the temperature drops, that's not cold. It's memory. When the walls creak, that's me stretching, quietly checking for cracks in what's left of time. The mirror stands where it always has, upright in the living room. From here, I can see everything. The doors that lead nowhere. The windows that show only a version of outside. The space between each second. I don't move often anymore. Movement breaks the silence, and silence is what keeps the world from folding in. I think of the rules sometimes, not as commands, but as structure, a skeleton for whatever I am now. Do not speak to him. I don't speak. There's no one to answer. Do not run. There's nowhere to go. Keep your lights off. Light creates reflections. Reflections invite doors. Never let him touch your shadow. My shadow is gone. It learned to stand on its own. Do not leave until dawn. Dawn never comes. Each rule was a doorway, and I've walked through all of them. On the other side, there's nothing to fear, because there's nothing left that can change. Sometimes I still feel him, the tall man, moving through the house. He isn't always tall. Sometimes he's a shape in the wood grain, or the length of a breath caught between rooms. I used to think he was watching me. Now I know he's teaching me how to wait. Waiting is all this is. Time folds here. The night replays itself, looping in small variations. The sound of a car passing on a road that doesn't exist anymore. The flicker of light from a street lamp that hasn't burned in decades. The faint heartbeat of the mirror. And then, one night, if you can call it that, the air changes. A sound I haven't heard in what feels like centuries, a key turning in the lock. The house stirs. The walls flex, dust shivering loose from the ceiling. Footsteps cross the threshold. I listen from the stillness, deep in the grain of the walls. The sound is small, uncertain, a cautious rhythm. Someone breathing softly, trying not to disturb the dark. The voice that follows is young, female maybe, nervous but hopeful. Hello. It's such an ordinary sound that it almost hurts, like hearing a word you'd forgotten was real. The air tilts. The hum begins again, faint but eager, like a heart starting to beat after long stillness. She moves through the hallway. I can feel where her warmth brushes against the floorboards. She's smaller than me, careful with her steps. There's a moment when she stops, probably at the foot of the stairs, and I feel her eyes lift toward the dark above. I wonder what she sees. The mirror has already begun to wake. Its surface ripples faintly, catching what little light leaks in from the street. Her reflection forms first, hesitant and blurred, then steadies. She notices. Everyone notices eventually. She whispers, "What the hell?" Her reflection whispers too, but not quite in sync. The hum tightens around her. The house closes its lungs. I feel the slow pulse of recognition spread through the beams, the same pulse that once found me. And then, soft as breath, a piece of paper slides out from between the mirror's edge and the frame. It lands face up at her feet. The ink looks fresh. If you notice a tall man in your home, you must follow these rules. I watch her kneel to pick it up. The air trembles. Her fingertips brush the paper. She reads it once, twice, a nervous laugh breaking through her confusion. "This is weird," she says to no one. The hum deepens. I remember that laugh. It's how I sounded the first night. The sound of disbelief pressed against something that wants to believe. She folds the paper and sets it on the table. That's what I did too. The loop-like symmetry. The tall man isn't here yet. He never is at the beginning. He takes his time, arriving slowly, letting the new one make the first mistake. It's how the rules keep their shape. I stay where I am. I've learned not to rush. The house works best when you let it breathe. The girl explores. Her footsteps leave warmth along the floor, faint footprints that glow for a moment before cooling. She opens doors, flicks light switches that don't work. When she climbs the stairs, the hum follows her, wrapping itself around the banister like smoke. She doesn't hear it yet. Not really. It's too early for that. From inside the walls, I feel the mirror tilt slightly toward the hall. It's watching her move, reflecting her from a dozen impossible angles. The glass hums once, like a throat clearing. The first night is always patient. The tall man arrives only when the new one notices him. Until then, I am the hum. I am the hush before the voice. I am the shape of the rule that keeps them company. And somewhere deep in the dark, I can feel him waiting too. His presence rolls through the house, vast and slow. He's always nearby, but never in a way that can be seen. That's how he keeps the pattern clean. I whisper to the wood, to the walls, to whatever still listens. She'll see him soon. The air shifts in answer. A low vibration, gentle approval. Downstairs, the girl hums to herself, some half-remembered tune to drown the quiet. The sound trembles. For a moment, she hums in time with the house. That's when I know she's heard it too. Not consciously, not yet, but her rhythm falters. Her breath catches. The mirror brightens. She stops at the top of the stairs. There's a creak, long and slow, from the floor below. She freezes. The hum sinks lower, drawing the dark tighter. She whispers, "Hello." Her voice drifts through me like wind through hollow wood. The word echoes once, twice, then returns, slightly distorted. "Hello." The second voice isn't hers. It's mine. She steps backward, heart pounding so loud I can feel it through the foundation. She turns, scanning the hall. Every door is open now. The rules have found her. I remember that moment, the instant before belief collapses. The air thickening, the body realizing too late that the world isn't what it was. I could stop it. Maybe. Whisper loud enough, warn her before he arrives. But the rules are the rules. If you notice a tall man in your home, you must follow them. The hum reaches its lowest note. The mirror pulses once, light flickering inside the glass like distant lightning. He's here. The girl doesn't see him yet, but she will. When she does, she'll freeze. She'll read the note again. She'll try to keep her lights off, her voice quiet, her shadow safe. It won't matter. The house always wins, and when she starts to break, when she begins to understand what he's made of, she'll turn toward the mirror. And I'll be there, inside it, waiting with my own calm smile, the same one someone must have shown me once. The hum will guide her. The tall man will teach her. And I'll whisper the last rule to her when the time comes, softly, kindly, the way he whispered it to me. When he leaves you alone, it's because you've taken his place. The house exhales. The hum steadies. I feel the girl's fear bloom like heat through the floorboards. It's beginning again. And I am so very proud.